Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of This Thing We're Doing. My name is Alan, and I'm joined in with my buddy, Nick. And in this episode, we'll be reviewing Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. Oh, voice crack.
Yes, sir.
I would like to apologize for sounding a little nerdier because I'm a bit sick. My nose is clogged slightly, but that don't matter because what matters more is this beautiful piece of work that we recently watched. So, Nick, what do you think of the movie that we just watched?
Well, I like this movie quite a bit. This is my second time watching the movie. The first time I watched it was about this time last year. I had found out about it from just like shit that came up on my Instagram, and I was like, hey, this looks interesting. We could cover this on TTWD. Have like, oh yeah, by the way, we're gonna be doing like a series of spooky related stuff in like the month of October. This is the first of that series, so look forward to that.
Yes, sir.
So I found it last year. It was on Instagram, whatever. I liked it. I saved it. I put it on the watch list, whatever. And the first time I watched it, I don't know, this wasn't exactly what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting like a sci-fi type thing from this. I was expecting vampires. Honestly, I was expecting more like cowboys rather than sci-fi. I mean, I guess like he's a bounty hunter. Bounty hunters and cowboys kind of like overlap a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know, the whole setting is like very surreal to me. Like, I don't know, it's just a very interesting combination of things. Yeah, that's what I'll say for now. What did you think?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. The whole setting was kind of, it resembled the American frontier type of stuff, like the Wild West and stuff. I guess like that premonition comes from some of the scenes where Dee and Layla were in a town that resembled something out of a Wild West movie with the sheriff and everything. But it's just, other than that particular scene, the use of horses and, like you mentioned, bounty hunting is very common in Wild West movies. It's kind of a trope, actually. But yeah, I would say it's kind of a mix between American frontier and, how do I put it, gothic aesthetic.
Yeah, definitely.
What I want to do is, I'm going to go categorically with this. I want to start with animation itself. Actually, I don't know much about the production, by the way. I didn't get like a lot of information from it. From what I've heard, is that the original animators wanted to extend on the movie since it's kind of a sequel to another movie called Vampire Hunter D. I don't recall when that movie was released, but it's a predecessor, right? And they wanted to work on a sequel, something that's quote unquote better in a way. Do you know much about the the pre-production?
These movies, I guess, are like adaptations of a novel series by the same name. So the novel series was made by this guy called Kikuchi Hideyuki, and they first started being serialized or published in like 1983. And that first movie came out is an adaptation of the first book, and that came out in 1985. And from what I've heard and from what I've seen, it was like a very underwhelming movie. Like by the time that movie came out, there was 3 books in the series. So there was the first one, which the movie adapted, there was whatever the second one was, and then the third one was the original source material for what Bloodlust is based off of, from what I've understood. And pretty much everybody was like, this first movie was a bit of a failure, performance-wise, art-wise, animation-wise, just everything. Neither of us have actually seen it, so we can't really like give feedback on that. From what I've seen, it looks like a 1980s anime movie, which it's not bad looking, at least to me. It's not bad looking. It looks cheaper. It just looks cheaper. It looks like a straight to DVD TV type movie. And you're right. Pretty much everybody going into Bloodlust was like, we want to top ourselves. We want to level up in every way, basically. So you're gonna be very happy about this, Alan. I know just from listening to your voice, from not even seeing your face, I can tell from what I'm about to say, you're gonna be very happy about this.
Tell me.
Do you remember Studio Madhouse?
Yes, that name rings a bell.
They were responsible for animating this. Madhouse are mad lads. They make like some of the best shit in the industry. And the animation director, remember this name because this man was a part of the animation team for One Punch Man. I didn't mention it in that podcast video, but he was part of the reason for why that was so good. And he is also gonna be on one of the other Halloween movies that we're gonna do. This guy's name is Yoshiaki Kawajiri.
Yoshiaki Tawajiri. Okay.
He's a mad lad, basically. I guess part of like the pre-production aspirations for this movie. They really wanted this to be like a big theatrical release, especially in the US. By 2001, I think there was like 19 books in the Vampire Hunter D series. So it pretty much already had like a massive follower base in Japan already. And it was like very well established. D is like a very well established character. He'd been on so many adventures, whatever. And like this was kind of like the plot to bring it to the West, because at the time those books weren't really there and they didn't really have like good translations or anything. This movie was very expensive, by the way. I couldn't find any like solid numbers, but I think it's not like in the $200 million range or anything like that. I think it's like between 70 million and like $120 million, something like that. I've seen like all kind of estimates or whatever. But when the movie came out in the West, it was such like a big push to put this out in the West that when it came out in every cinema that they put this out in the West, in Japan, wherever, it was only in English dub.
Whoa.
However, this movie, I mean, it did well in theaters, but they didn't make enough back from like all the production and whatever, just from cinema sales or whatever. They mostly made it back from like DVD sales and stuff.
I see, actually. Like, I was gonna say about the box office thing, because I found some statistics and it genuinely surprised me when you said like it cost around 70 million to, well, like as an estimate, because the box office was around 1 million, maybe even less or something. So I was like, oh boy, if that was the case, that would have been a shock. Probably the biggest nosedive in box office maybe ever. But considering like there was also a huge DVD sale, then they probably filled out the rest. And now that you mentioned about the anime was run with the English dub, I would say like, well, I'm gonna get a bit into this a bit later. It fits into a different category, but it kind of explains why the voice acting was pretty good in this anime. I feel like each voice fit the character it belonged to in a way, especially D and the guy with chin hair who always smoked a cig, Borgoff, I think. Each character's voice fit them, and I could already tell like from the start they were prioritizing for that.
Did you watch this in Japanese or in English?
In English only.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I watched it in Japanese.
Oh, you have? Oh boy.
I'm the true weeb here. I only watched that shit in Japanese.
And I am the brutal Western colonizing nerd that I am, who drinks cola.
I've heard that the dub is good. I've heard like clips and stuff and it sounds good. I just watched it in Japanese because, yeah.
That's totally fair, I suppose. How's the dub in Japanese? Was it like any good?
I really like it. I think, so from what I've heard from like reviews that I've seen, the dub, they like fill out the lines of like, so like when you see a character's mouth moving, like they fill out all the dialogue just so that everything can match. So like if someone is like meeting someone for the first time and they say hi or whatever, if the lip movements keep going, they'll say like, hey, long time no see, instead of just hi by itself.
Yeah, that would have been awkward on its own.
That's like a known thing about like early, well, not even early dubbing, just like dubbing things from other countries in general. You have to fill out the lines and it can definitely feel that way. The Sonic OVA was filled with that shit. People would just repeat the same thing over and over and over again like 5 times. I've never seen that thing in Japanese, by the way, but like it's like a known thing.
Moving on to animation. I told you this earlier, but overall, the way I feel about the animation, it's stylized to feel both cheap and expensive in a way. Cheap in a way as if like, well, I mean, I suppose because of the whole resolution quality, it gives its cheap look. But the exorbitant animation style comes from most scenes where you can see characters turning or making movement. Because in, let's say, Sonic OVA, you see a lot of animation frames being repeated. And I'm not saying that they're not being repeated in Vampire Hunter D. I'm very certain that a lot of frames were being repeated there, but still, even then, the animators took time, like, fully animating the characters when the camera was panning around them, or like depending on how the camera was looking at the characters. Their pose, their posture, it was made them look more alive and less robotic.
For me, it's so hard to get into the animation of this because like everyone knows it's good, like, but it's like the way to fill out saying that it's good, because we know it's like very detailed and whatever, and the art is like very detailed and just whatever. I think, I don't even know. Actually, you know what? Let me ask you this. On your eyegasm scale, where would you put this from like the things we've watched and ranked before?
Sonic OVA is definitely going on the bottom. Now, the one that's okay, and maybe after it, Mike Tyson Mysteries. I would put on the very top either One Punch Man or, oh, it's a difficult choice. Oh, difficult. It's difficult to consider on its own, you know. I would put it very high though. Like it would somewhere be if we reviewed like maybe 20, then I would definitely put it in the top 5.
How do you feel about the plot of this movie? I quite like it.
Yeah, actually, the plot was also one of the things that I was not excited about, but like, how do I put it? It was just nice, right?
For me, it was more interesting than I thought it would be. Well, the first time I watched it, I didn't think it would be this interesting.
Yeah, I had similar opinions as well. It was pretty easy to follow, actually. A bit lazy on their part for not, well, I don't know if it's lazy or intentional or whatever, but maybe both. But summarizing the background in the very first few scenes of the movie, like talking about what a dampil is.
I think because this series, like the series of books and like all extended media, whatever, this series has a lot of lore and shit. Like we were talking about this earlier, but like as I was watching it the second time, I definitely felt that there was a lot of subtext that we weren't getting. And like if you were to search it up, you would get the answer, but they just don't directly tell you in the movie. Like for some reason, he just has a sentient left hand.
Oh yeah.
Like the lore of this series takes place over like tens of thousands of years, and so D is like over 10,000 years old.
A lot of things were quite unexplained. I suppose while watching, I just didn't care mostly, because I was mostly following the main plot of D pursuing Meyer and the girl he stole.
One thing I will add is that apparently after like the halfway point of this movie, it separates from like it's an adaptation, so it's like not gonna follow specifically beat for beat the book.
I was coming up with a few questions, and I wanted to ask you, which character do you like the most in the show in terms of their background, their role in the story, and their design?
I mean, it's gonna sound cliche, but probably D, mostly because of like all the enigma surrounding him. And he's also just like a very elegant guy, you know, like there was a scene, you know, that scene where they like meet the girl when she's at like the lake, where it was.
Yes, that scene.
Just after that, when they start fighting the tree girl, whatever her name is, Caroline, I think, he like skips across the water, and it's like very elegant. And I like that he's got like just this massive sword just on his back, and he like waves it around like a magic wand or something. He's just very elegant. And there's something about like characters that fight in that type of way, like very floaty, and it is very interesting to see. I don't know, I just like his design. You know what it is? He's very flowy. I mean, I already said that, like, with his movements and stuff, but like, he's got his massive cape, he's got his massive hat, he's got his long ass hair that like covers his face and stuff.
I was gonna actually, I'm glad that you said D, because if I had to ask myself this question as well, I would most likely select D as well. And the reason for that was pretty much everything you've described, including the voice acting. Dude, his voice, I could fall asleep to that voice. The way he speaks is very calming, very relaxing. It's like he's telling you a bedtime story. And it doesn't even sound boring at all. It's very engaging, and like it forces you to hear him. Like once again, like from what I said during the production category, it's that they emphasized on voice acting a lot, and it's shown through his voice as well. It's calming, it's enchanting.
If you were to take a still image from any scene in this movie, you could have that as a wallpaper, or like framed on your living room wall, and like that's like an instant conversation starter.
I never thought of that actually, but now that I think about it, you're right.
What would be like the one, if you had to pick one scene in the movie that you would like hang on your wall, what would it be?
I got a lot of scenes in my mind. It's gotta be the one where D is in a standoff with Meyer, and like, you know, they've got their swords, and like, you know, Meyer's cape is being crumpled because of the weight of D's sword. But like the zoom in, I would have added the zoom in on D, maybe as a wallpaper. Him behind his sword, reflecting Meyer's cape. Probably that. But oh yeah, and the other one I would think of is, if I had to hang something else on the wall, it would probably be the imagery of the castle near the end of the movie where D and Layla are exiting away from it. What about you?
There's the castle one. There is the other two are, there's that scene at the beginning of the movie where the sand mantas come out of the sand, and like you get the far away shot of like them coming out, and D is just standing in the corner. That's one. And then the other one would be when he confronts Charlotte at the lake, and like if you see all the reflections in that water, it's amazing. Like someone drew that, someone painted that.
I never actually noticed that detail. I should probably look at that more closely once I rewatch it.
Bro, everything in this movie is so fucking detailed. You know that scene where they're like, him and Layla are like sitting in the tree.
Right.
You can see like the details of like all the vines coming down and like the specks of dirt and shit on the floor and whatever. And even like as the rain's coming down, you get like a establishing shot of the tree as it's raining, and you see like I don't know how you describe it, but like the water flowing down the tree pretty much. It's all very detailed and it's all like,
oh yeah, okay, now that you reminded me of that, yeah, like now that I think about it, you're definitely right. No, I remember taking note of that. Sorry, I'm repeating myself, but like I'm remembering, but I definitely took note of that, and I was pretty perplexed by it as well. I cannot wait to see more of Yoshiaki Kawajiri's products. Oh, one more thing I wanted to talk about that I took note of earlier on in the movie was the sound design and the soundtrack. It fitted, right? I loved the sound effects. It was on, was it on the same level as JoJo? Probably like that, because sound effects in JoJo are also pretty satisfying to listen to. But like everything was pretty somber and relaxing to listen to. The footsteps, D walking on dirt. No, it was just relaxing to listen to. And the soundtrack was also pretty fitting. It got on a Castlevania level of soundtrack, especially toward the end with Meyer and stuff. So maybe it's a homage. I don't know. But still, just looking at Meyer makes me feel like a sex addict.